Good morning, Dominica. Good morning, Eastern Caribbean. Welcome to another Creole Heartbeat edition. And this morning we have a very special program with the kind compliments of DG Cell. We are going to explore some of a major area of our arts and culture in Dominica. We're going to actually touch base on our World Creole Music Festival, Creole music in its form and the way it's going presently, what it stands for. Also, the Creole language. There was a very interesting panel discussion last evening on the languages of Dominica as we continue to try to get our identity as it should be. And we have a very important person in the arts and culture in Dominica. One was really excelled. I call him the godfather of cadence, lives some music, musical intellect, and has done so much for Dominica, who will be exploring the various areas. Good morning to you, Monsieur Gordon Henderson. As a matter of fact, today is Chapeau Pie Day. Saka fait frère.
Unfortunately, we're not wearing our chapeau pie. Had I known, I would have come down with my chapeau pie, man.
Yes. Today we are celebrating Chapeau Pie. I tried getting mine. I seem to have got it mixed up, located where somewhere in my vicinity. But it's okay. It's in our heart. The chapeau somewhere in our heart. So how are things?
The heart is in the heart.
The heart is in the heart. So how are things? How are things, Godfather?
Everything's cool. Everything is cool. I'm very eager to discuss this important matter with you today, as we have discussed so many times together in private.
I know, but it's very important because I always felt that the education aspect of the World Creole Music Festival has not been explored. People don't seem to want to know about it. And they tell themselves what is going on today. It is what it's supposed to be. But let's start from the beginning. In your opinion, and what is Creole music? You have been there from the very early stage of the World Creole Music Festival. When we define Creole music, what is Creole music in your mind, Gordon?
Okay, I don't want to stand as someone coming out with an absolute, but what I would like to say is, as far as the World Creole Music Festival is concerned, we don't have to be hypocritical about it. The Creole music that we are speaking about, the Creole music that we are supposed to preserve, is what we may call, from a language standpoint, the Franco-Creole. So that's because we really have to break it down so that everyone can understand. From a language standpoint, the Franco-Creole. From a rhythmic standpoint, one does not have to be a musicologist to know the difference between something that is very close to calypso as compared to rock and roll, as compared to even salsa. And I use calypso because calypso began in the Creole language. And anyone who wants to doubt me can do their research, but we can find out that it began in the Creole language. Because if calypso began in the Caribbean, what is the first language that was spoken in the Caribbean? It had to be Creole, because we don't speak Lingala, we don't speak Swahili, we don't speak any of the languages from Africa. We had to create our own. And Trinidad, that made calypso very, very important as a genre, they spoke Spanish. The capital is part of Spain. And they imported Creole speakers. We don't have to go deep into the history. And they started this calypso business down there. I say they started, but they continued in the Creole language. So when we got together and decided that we should create the World Creole Music Festival, the Creole music we're talking about is one, as I said, I'll repeat, of Franco Creole, and it's not any extended definition to say, well, Jamaican patois is a Creole, or even Kokoy is a Creole. Oh, yes, from a semantic standpoint, we can make certain shifts. But the music we're talking about is the Calypso Franco Creole style. That's how it began.
Important you mentioned that because in some of the research that I did, I understood that Dominica and Matnik were also part of the very early speaking calypso singers, and the music during those days would have been in Creole.
Inevitably, as I said, since the enslaved Africans could not converse, they were sold to different plantations where they could not speak their native tongues. They had to create a language, and that is Creole. And the music of St. Lucia, many people might not know it, but Grenada is a former French colony. Martinique, Guadeloupe, they are departments and regions of France, but they're former French colonies, Dominica. So whatever we did in music, that was imported by Trinidad. And the only reason that Calypso moved to English in Trinidad is because when Trinidad became a British colony after the Spanish, they wanted to stamp out Creole from their British colony. And they imported Barbadian teachers to teach the Trinidadian population to speak English. And gradually, and very lately, from the 1930s, they started speaking and singing in English. Wow. So all of that, we know what Creole we're talking about.
So it's inevitable that there is some mix up as to the prevalence of that particular Creole. You were there from the beginning as the overseas coordinator, a very important role. Then, can you tell us what that role entails, and then we will actually get into the vision of the World Creole Music and really endorsing the French or Franco Creole from then. But what was the role as the international coordinator then? And let us get into from there into the vision that you understand that the World Creole Music Festival was supposed to be.
Well, when I was asked to become the what was later called the international coordinator, I must say right away I was not there at the inception. There were many, many people and so on. But I can quickly say that the person who called me on behalf of the NDC, that the NDC was run by Sheridan Gregoire, and there were committees with Marc Marie, with Sobas Esprit, with a number of people. The person who contacted me was Dennis Joseph on behalf of the GFC and the NDC. And my role was to popularize, because I was told that this festival is not another village feast. It's not an Isidore or one of our great village feasts. It was going to be something global. And they thought that in those days I had the capacity of giving it that global attention. And without boasting, they were right. As a matter of fact, they used my picture, the effigy that was painted by the late Earl Etienne, as the logo of the festival. And they asked me to try to make it global with no money. So what I did a number of things, but there are two main things that I did. The first thing was to get RFO, which was the French Overseas Radio and Television. So we're talking about radio and television that exists in Saint-Pierre and Miquelon. So these are French islands of Canada. So that is North America. In French Guyana, that is South America. Martinique, Guadeloupe, St. Martin, that's the Caribbean. In Tahiti, which is in the Pacific Ocean. In La Réunion, which is in the Indian Ocean. And there is also, I forgot the name of that overseas department, which is off Australia in the Pacific, I think that's what that ocean is. So I happened to make a deal with them so they could become a partner of the World Creole Music Festival. They became a partner, and they, at their cost, would come down to Dominica. I said they would, but they came down to Dominica, where they did radio and television shows that was broadcast on the entire network that I just said, which is global, all over the world. So that is on one end. On the other end, there was a popular radio station in New York City called WLIB that covered what they call the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. And I was able to make a deal with them with a lot of difficulty, because at the time they only played 95% of their music was Trinidad or Jamaica, which they explained why they did that. It was so I had to really use every trick in the book to get them involved. So basically, that is what my role was, and to sustain that kind of relationship and bring in partnerships from these two ends. So that
So,
we cover the whole world.
so safely we can say from that Genesis, that first edition, when RFO came in, and also from WLIB end, the word got out there that Dominica was doing something that was already global. And that is where the world aspect of it was touching the various Creole people globally. So we can say from the inception already a brand was being built. And we can also say safely the French overseas departments were already engaged, which we know the French Creole was already the spinal cord and the foundation then. What was the vision, in your opinion, and possibly the objectives that you were told that this World Creole Music Festival would be?
Well, I was told in writing because I requested it. Number one, the objective of the festival was primarily to attract visitors. And visitors would not mean necessarily strangers. Today we talk about the diaspora as if it's diaspora against locals. but the idea was to attract Dominicans who resided abroad and to attract foreigners as tourists.
Mhm.
So that was the objective that was laid out to me. In my response, I requested to add that the festival would also work towards the research and development of Creole music. Because as you say, if we don't use it, we will lose it.
Absolutely.
And many people might not understand. It's like having anything. Well, in terms of the intangibles, like culture, language, if you don't use it, it will die. You will lose it.
Mhm.
In terms of tangibles like your car, maintenance. So in one case, it's about use. But
Mhm.
in terms of tangibles like your car, if you don't maintain it, you won't sustain it.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you don't put oil in your car, at some point the engine is going to break down. So this
Absolutely.
is why I requested, and this is where I think that we failed. We did not spend a penny on the maintenance of Creole music, on the research and development, so that our core product that gave us the legitimacy, the Creole music, we just let it continue on its own. And eventually, we reached a point where it would seem from national consensus, we felt that the Creole music was not sustainable enough. Because remember, if we don't maintain maintenance, we won't sustain. So we
Absolutely.
reached a point where everybody said, but this is old time music and this is that and so on. And then we made a switch, a focus switch to trends. What's trending? Now, I don't know, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I am not against including what is trending. I repeat, I am not against putting what is trending. Since we have already made that mistake, we have already concluded that we have no confidence in what is ours to attract people. And here, it's not free criticism. I mean, if we watch the progression of the festival from year one to now, we will notice that there has been a drop in confidence in terms of our core product. So we had to get what is trending from outside. That might be good. What I am saying is something that I've heard you say on radio many times. If we do not want to maintain the Creole, strike out the word Creole from the name.
Absolutely.
But I'm saying we don't have to do that. We still have a chance. We can bring in rap artists as we have done. We can bring in find excuses to bring high priced um Afrobeat or whatever or reggae. But I don't think we should have them as headliners of our Creole music. It's as if, Wadix, you're inviting me as a guest to your wedding, and then you feel that you're not a big enough man, and you're putting my name instead on the invitations, because that's what we're doing. We're inviting people to come, and instead of putting Wadix is getting married, you put in Gordon Henderson because you think Gordon Henderson is trending, invites you to Wadix um wedding.
Wedding.
No, I'm not criticizing anyone. So what I'm saying, if you want to bring in, and let's get to reality, bring a boy.
Yeah.
Give him, if you think you have millions to give him, pay him his millions because he's trending. At least you believe that. Give him whatever jet service. Give him the red carpet from Douglas Charles. Give him whatever you want. But feature him as special guest artist at Dominica's World Creole Music Festival, of which Midnight Groovers is the headliner.
Yeah.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So I hope the analogy with the wedding can help understand that thing.
Okay. I recently spoke to some school children. I like speaking to young people to get their opinion. And I try to ask them what they understand by W, C, M, and F. And to my amazement, they told me that the W mean you can get any band in the world. And I didn't ask them the question together simultaneously. They told me that the W in the World Creole Music Festival mean you can get any band from any genre, from any part of the world. So it simply means they don't understand. I spoke to some very important people in the hierarchy of governance here, and they seem to feel that the English Creole have the perfect place in the World Creole Music Festival. I spent quite a bit of time trying to explain to them that was never the vision of the World Creole Music Festival, and I pointed out to them, and I hope very soon we can go over to the studies made by Dr. Kifnus of Trinidad. So there seemed to be a lack of education, a lack of understanding of what the first of all the W, the C, well the M and the F could mean anything. Music festival could be any music festival, but in particular the W and the C, because it just seemed to feel that the English Creole is dominant. And I tried to explain, as a matter of fact, I told a few people, very important people, even in the Caribbean, when you look at the Caribbean, French Creole people is more than English speaking Creole people. And they told me no. And I tried to explain to them,
You're
when you
right.
ask,
There are
because
more
they don't understand.
speakers in the Caribbean than
Uh-huh.
English speakers.
Of course. Of
Yeah.
course. And I mean, you can add Jamaica, Guyana, you can even add some Latin American countries. In French Creole speakers in the Caribbean are more than English speaking. So that's where you come back to the point of lack of confidence. But I also want you to mention Franco or French Creole people globally, so we can have an understanding of what we meant then and how we could include the other aspects of Creole into the World Creole Music Festival, thus sustain it over that period of time.
Well, your survey with the young people is very, very interesting. And as I said, there have been focus shifts and there have been semantic shifts. It's important that our listeners make the establish the difference between the focus shift and the semantic shift. When it started, Creole, as we began the program with, the definition of Creole was based a lot on the linguistic, the language part. It was Franco-Creole. Now, the word world was not meant to qualify because it's World Creole Music Festival. World, although I loved and suggested world. I was among the people who suggested the word world. It was not to mean global or any kind of Creole. It was meant to express the fact that the festival, because we can call them adjectives of the word festival, this World Creole Music Festival. So World Creole Music was to qualify the noun festival. What kind of festival? It's a festival that is supposed to reach the world. Okay?
Mhm.
There was a type of music at the time that was trending then. That's why I said that you can have a focus shift that was called world music. But we didn't want to take away, as trends would come along, erase one for the other. Because the Creole that is Dominican hasn't changed.
Absolutely.
The Creole that is Dominican is what everybody used to call patois, and the
Mhm.
Creole music is what, I'm sorry, that every Dominican band, I mean, Cada Slipso is a type of music that gave Dominica a name before Dominica was independent. Many people probably don't even know that, although some of them believe that Cada Slips was traditional music that goes back to the days of slavery. But that is the music. So we cannot give it up because we think that something else is trending. Because our fundamental music is part of our legacy as a country, is part of our culture, is part of our history. So the children, probably some of the children, because the festival, there has been how many editions? 23 or something like that.
Yeah.
But the festival started in 1997.
Yes, and I think there were 2 years. I think 2 years or 3 years. We had no editions. I think Erica, Maria, and
COVID.
COVID. Yeah.
Okay. So which means since 1997. So if you speak to a child, it's a pity that you did your survey. Well, not a pity, but the fact that you did your survey with children, the children are younger than the festival,
Mhm.
so they would have no idea what this festival is all about. They say forwards world, so they said, well, this should include music from all over the world. Creole, Creole might mean anything that is not one of the standard languages spoken in the Caribbean. Music, music is universal, so it's any music. So which means that departs from the very essence of the festival itself. So which means people that were born after 1997, I forgive them. I don't
But but
forgive
but
those
but
that
but,
were
but then
born.
why? But then the reason why I brought them up and the reason why I decided to ask them is simply because the onus is on the DDA and the DFC to educate. Because remember, from the word go, we used to have symposiums so that we could, the educational component was very critical so that people would understand what is the meaning of Creole, why we are a Creole, our Creole identity, and very critical. The festival was chosen after several months of debate, and we went through the entire calendar, and it was eventually agreed for October. Now, October is when Dominica, for years since Io Libla, celebrated our French Creole culture. Remember, we must not forget that independence which was before National Day celebrations and whatnot. After independence, it became the independence, is where we celebrate and highlight our French Creole culture, not English culture, except maybe Kokoituri. So apart from Kokoituri, which is one of the Creoles or one of the languages that we spoke, that was basically to highlight our French, in particular Creole culture. Okay, the Kalinagos speak more Creole than even their own language, as we were told last said in the thing. I think Mr. Greg was trying to reach us, so we may even get him on to give his own views because he was also the first chairman. And this is very important, eh? And the reason why I'm saying that is because we're seeing things just happening, and people seem to feel that it is right because no one is bringing or attempting to educate. We seem to feel what's going on now is right because the excuses I heard on this medium that English Creole is Creole of the world Creole Music Fest. By the way, we have Mr. G who wants to come in. Mr. G, good afternoon, good morning to you. How are you, sir?
What is you doing?
Not too bad. We have Gordon Henderson, and we go into the genesis, the metamorphosis of the Creole, trying to really balance everything out and give some proper factual perspective to what we introduced to Dominica and was a brand immediately. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I see all your dark shades in your Creole season already. Let me say good morning to Gordon.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yes, Mr. G.
Hi, Gordon. Hi, what's happening? So let me just say first of all what is. I listened to Gordon, and I think Gordon got a lot of it right.
Yes.
In terms of, what is the concept when we started up and his role as the international coordinator. So he got that right. And I think a lot of work was done there. And I think, but it's unfortunate that we seem to have lost the direction of where all of that was going initially. I mean, I just wanted to add a few things. I mean, when we talk about world and Creole, Gordon started talking about the world music, but my thought was we need to have a world Creole music beat. Because sometimes today I find this beat is what a lot of these people talking about. I think that's have a beat, this other one has a beat, this other one. We need to get a world Creole. So he's right. In other words, you want to create a world Creole music beat so that beat can compare with whether you're talking about country music beat or that kind of music beat. And then we were supposed to have had what we call a World Creole Music Award.
Yes.
In other words, you take all the big names in the Creole music all over the world. They have a big award thing, just like you have your country music awards and all these different kind of music awards.
We actually started it, Mr. G. We actually started it. We still have in the week. I think the day before the festival, we still have the awards.
That's correct. And then, of course, we were supposed to have exported that thing. In other words, the idea was to start exporting our world Creole music to the rest of the world. And God would have played a major role in that because we would have had those kind of festivals in various locations in the world. And the French component of it was, in fact, a very critical component. Now, one of the things that we actually did when we talk about the language is I remember we started, in fact, having this annual World Federation of Creole Cultures. We had established something called the World Federation of Creole Cultures. I think we had asked Gordon and Sobers, if I can remember.
Gregory Rabes and Jamala also were part of the committee.
To register that foundation. And the whole idea every year would have all these universities from Africa, from all the French countries, Martinique, Guadeloupe, and we started having that so that we could promote the Creole. The whole idea was to make Dominica the headquarters of Creole. The World Federation of Creole Cultures was to be headquartered in Dominica. That was the kind of plan that we started doing this. We started having a little exhibition, of products and so on. And so the whole question of language, what it is, you always struggling and talking about, like, the Czech is trying to push this thing from now. That is very good, but we are intended to take this thing very seriously. That is why you brought all these universities down to deal with not only the music and so on, but the language as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's important for us to remind the people who are doing this today the direction this thing was supposed to go, because it is not just a little set here and there, because I noticed St. Lucia, in fact, is trying to pick up on the thing.
Yep.
And if we're not careful, we lose it. And St. Lucia, I heard somebody say, but you know, St. Lucia is charging $600 and people are still coming. It means St. Lucia is taking it over. If people are
Absolutely.
willing to pay 600 and we're charging only so much and we're not getting as many people. So we need to go back to the original thing. You know, go back to, as Gordon is saying, you have trendy music. Yes, you can use them. But when we started off, remember, we brought one from Africa, we brought one from Haiti, all those different countries. And then eventually we had one from New Orleans, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Zydeco.
Zydeco. So the idea was to really make this a world thing. So maybe Gordon can add something to some of this.
Absolutely. Gordon, you would have heard now Mr. G's contribution. I'm not sure if you want to add anything before we actually go into the Kiffness studies.
But an important thing that he said is the idea of the World Federation of Creole
Cultures.
Right?
Yeah.
That's very, very important because
very important.
The World Creole Music Festival was not meant to be solely a glorified village feast based on gate receipts. It was supposed to be a pivot. As a matter of fact, the DFC sent Eddie Toulon to a mini MEDEM. For people who don't know, MEDEM used to be, they don't do it anymore, probably because of the internet, but there was probably for 20 years, like the big Cannes Film Festival. Most people know about the Cannes Film. Cannes is a town or a city in the south of France, in the French Riviera. There used to be something called a MEDEM, MIDEM, where all professionals in music, that's producers, artists, music publishers, distributors, they went for 2 weeks to MEDEM and they met each other. They had interactions, they sold. That's what happened once a year. And
I remember accompanying Eddie in the one in Miami. I'm not sure if it's that same one.
Yeah. I remember you were there.
Yes,
in
Miami. I
remember a silly little joke that I wouldn't share on air. You pointed something out to me.
But I remember accompanying Eddie in the one in Miami. I'm not sure if this is the same one.
So that's it. It was a mini MEDEM.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they did it in Miami. But the idea probably came when they realized what the World Creole Music Festival was doing, because the World Creole Music Festival was meant to be a pivot for all around which the linguistic side would circle, the music business side would circle, the language side would circle, the cuisine, the fashion. As Sheridan mentioned, there was the World Creole Miss or whatever, a pageant.
Yes.
World Creole,
yes.
an award ceremony.
Yes.
And all of that. So that is a very important factor, that even if we think of a focus shift in terms of trending, we cannot abandon all of that and go only on trends. I mean, even from an intellectual standpoint, it doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. Dr. Kiffness and both Mr. Gregor, if he's still on, and you, he did 2 studies, but I can remember the first one where we actually revealed the results of his studies at the Arawak House of Culture, or Arawak House of Culture then, that this is something unique and the only festival of its kind in the world. Because we even later saw a Creole festival in Seychelles. I don't know if you remember that, where Casa was the headliner. So that was a spill off from our own idea. But then Dr. Kifnos from Trinidad, one of his main result from his service told us this is a unique product. It's an indigenous product, and we should do everything not to dilute it. But we did the exact opposite. I'm not sure if Mr. Greg and Gordon want to share a few words on that.
Yes, I remember that. You see, well, here's the thing, right? If Gordon can also go back in his memory, and you can go back in your memory, part of our discussions was this, that we were going to create this thing as this new indigenous music, this world Creole music, and make that platform so big as Dominica becomes the headquarters for the World Federation of Creole Cultures. Artists that are coming up in the world and their promoters, we would want them to identify that this is the platform on which they would have to launch the music. Any band, any Creole band that wants to come up in the world and get big, they would have to launch those bands on our platform at the WCMF, and we would get them to do that free of charge.
Absolutely.
So the idea is that those people, instead of having to pay all these bands all this money, would have established that brand and, promoted it to such a level in the world that all these new Creole artists would want to come and launch. Their promoters would want to come and launch their band there, and in fact, we would not be paying them anything to do that. In fact, we may get to a point where we may have to charge them, allowing them to launch their bands on our platform.
You are so right. You are so right, Mr. G. And just before we go to Gordon, Kassav, and it's a fact. Kassav, before their entrance into the World Creole Music Festival, was almost over. They hardly played anywhere. They
had not played anywhere for 6 years.
Yes. And I want to repeat that. They were almost null and void. They were not playing anywhere. And from their entrance on the World Creole Music Festival, Kassav just rose to a different level.
And went to places like Barbados for the first time, St. Lucia for the first time, Curacao for the first time. And even after the death of Jacob, they continued.
Absolutely.
So what Sheridan Gregoire just said is very important, because he said two things. The World Creole Music Festival was supposed to be a launching pad for artists, known and unknown. Okay? But the other thing is, I kind of lost my drift there on that particular
the second item. But then you can possibly go to Dr. Kifner's recommendation for us.
Well, I hardly ever make reference to Dr. Kifner's two surveys, because people like Mark Murray, Sheridan Gregoire himself,
myself,
you, Dennis Joseph, many, well, not necessarily many, but there was a group that always said that we have to maintain to sustain.
Yes.
I mean, that was the thing. Kifnos was not to educate us on that. It was from an academic standpoint.
But then here the important thing now, Gordon. Kifnos interviewed the players of the World Creole Music Festival to make his recommendations. So he actually had to interview all of us to finally come to his recommendation. But then we know, we love that style, that we will not listen to our own, but we will listen to everybody else. So he was actually talking exactly the same language that we were speaking, which is the total opposite to what's taking place today. That recommendations that we feel that was the most important one, not to dilute it. We paid him hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. But he was only repeating exactly what we were saying then. And we listened for a time until everything started to switch around. But then, as I have both of you guys again, I really want to delve into how, because this one is very important. How can WCMF contribute to the Creole culture and exploring ways that the World Creole Music Festival can further promote and preserve our heritage? Just recently, I did a research on heritage tourism. And I was amazed at the millions of people who travel globally just for heritage tourism. And my thoughts go back to the whole initiation and the whole genesis of the festival, which was an important heritage component, something indigenous, something cultural, something that people at this point in time not even caring too much about seawater and sand. I have been very observant in terms of understanding. Yes, we may have 5,000 people coming to Dominica, but how many actually visit? How many people actually leave the boat and come on the shores? But I can tell you, millions of people travel globally for heritage tourism. How can we use this World Creole Music Festival to contribute to further Creole culture, exploring ways that the Creole Music Festival can further promote and preserve our heritage? I'm not sure if Mr. G want to go first and then Gordon.
Let me just say this, Rod. You know, we had big ideas for the World Creole Music Festival. We had even bigger ideas to make Dominica the headquarters of the World Federation of Creole Culture. That was the big idea. It was bigger than the festival itself. The festival was a component of that. One of the things that we looked at, and I don't know if Gordon can remember that discussion, but we had a discussion where we said we were going to talk to the cruise lines, and especially look at Disney, to see if these people would come, get a big boat or two, if we could get the facilities to accommodate them, and sell tickets and packages to those people who come to Dominica during the festival. And this boat would sort of anchor there. Yeah. The people who need to go into a hotel, they'll just stay on the boat. Yes. They come and go to the festival. So we know the French people who were doing that. They come with the ferry and then they go back to the on the last night and so on. But we were looking to maybe as part of that tourism to get these boats to come and put a huge boat there with how many thousands of people. And these people would get off the ship and go to the festival and then go back on the boat and go to that because we didn't think they would have enough hotel room for those people at the time. So I think Gordon can remember some of that discussion.
Yes, Gordon?
Oh, yes, I can remember because one of the things that I retain from that is, remember the NDC is the
tourism.
It's tourism. And what in those discussions that we used to have, there was a distinction between excursionism and tourism. And the definition, according to some of the experts at the time, excursionism would include visits in one day. You see, like the cruise ships, you don't stay over because people as that was not really included. Yeah. So excursionism is you visit, you go to Mary Gallant, you spend the day and you come back. The cruise ship would pass there, go to the waterfall and leave. That was not what the World Creole Music Festival was meant to do. It was to promote tourism, which means you have to sleep.
Yes.
And in those days, we had very few hotel rooms. So that is where the idea that Sheridan Gregoire just brought up of getting cruise ships to come, but not for excursionism, but for tourism.
So they would go to the festival, go to the waterfalls also, and then they would go back on the ship and sleep.
Next day, 3 nights of pulsating rhythms.
Yes. I mean, this is tremendous, and that's why I'm happy that we are visiting these areas, because for too long I believe that most of the architects, most of the technocrats who dealt with this festival from the beginning are alive. are just a phone call away, but we chose not to include them. We chose not to actually have a conversation with them. So that's why it is important for us to revisit some of those times. But what other ways, Gordon, you feel that WCMF can contribute to the Creole culture?
Well, one, give trends, as I said, the red carpet, but do not have your guests as headliners. Give them the red carpet status, but they must remain special guests to the Creole festival.
Absolutely.
And I hate to use the stupid analogy like if we have a banana festival where you bring in plantain, you bring in cocoa, you bring in Cavendish, you bring in I forgot all the different types of banana, go Michel and whatever. And then you notice that people prefer corn curls than bananas. You do not invite corn curls from Barbados and put it as the headline of your banana festival. Because that's what we're doing. But I'm saying that if you need corn curls, invite them, but keep them in their lane, and we should work on. So some of the quick ideas that I think we need to do some collaborative performances, because that is in the research and development of our core product, which is our Creole music. Encourage collaborations, and I'm not talking about necessarily of in the studio. I'm talking about in the 3 nights of pulsating rhythm. Produce the shows so that you can have Mikel doing a duet. Because if you think Burna Boy is the biggest thing in the world, arrange for Mikel and Burna Boy to do. Do you know what kind of impact that will have? And all these Buju this and all these people, collabs, as we like to call it in the industry. Work on collabs for the festival.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one thing. I think we should have themed, because I wrote down themed stages and days. I know that you are a great proponent of the traditional music. So we could have themed stages. And when I say stage, I'm talking about the real stage,
Yeah.
the platform upon which the artists perform. So we could have themes, if it's not an entire night, but have themes.
We used to have themes at the first 4 editions of the festival.
Well, that died out.
I can send you the flyers a little later, but we used to have themes, Kadas this, Bouillon that, and so on and so on. We used to theme them. And it doesn't necessarily mean if there are themes that is all you will hear the night, but then you'll hear the theme
Right,
of those nights as the music unfolded.
Yeah, because you might have cadence, because I think of Midnight Groovers and so on, Bells Combo, that themed night. And if you feel that they are not bankable enough to attract the crowd, well, that is the night that you bring Celine Dion as special guest.
Yes.
I think that we need to have workshops and educational initiatives. Well, I keep hearing on Dominica Media how much bouillon is taking over the world. And I am not sure, because that's my passion. I've never stopped watching the evolution and development of various genres within the Creole that we're talking about. That doesn't include necessarily reggae, soca, and all of this, although they can be invited as red carpet guests. I keep repeating because, in our country, people like to misinterpret and when you watch other genres, compa got a serious blow from Zouk when Zouk came. You remember that Taboo combo almost didn't work
Yeah.
for years and so on. But they resisted. They changed their style of music. They maintained the name. That is another thing, but we haven't got time to discuss all these things. Is compa taking over the world? Compa artists. The other day we heard of one that died on stage.
Michael Benjamin.
Right. These guys were performing, and that was not a unique situation, They keep performing in Paris, France, in Miami, in New York City, in front of crowds of 15, 20,000. Are they taking over the world? So we need to do some workshops and educational initiatives. I noticed that Michael Henderson did something very recently.
Yes.
I think she did it on her own, or probably with.
I think she did it in collaboration with the University of the West Indies.
With you.
With you, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the World Creole Music Festival, whatever, should be one of the main sponsors of such an initiative. I also think we need a way to spotlight emerging artists. That has been done in a certain way, but it has been done very much to the appreciation of a certain type of public in a very circus way, and we love it and so on. But if we really want to take over the world, we have to give it another approach. So we need to spotlight emerging artists. And an artist is not only, when we think of artists that do residencies in Las Vegas, even the reggae guys haven't reached there. They've gone very, very far in the Caribbean. The soca fellas are following, but the reggae, they're way ahead. We have to train our people to take part in interviews. An artist is not only someone to go on the stage, like a male artist would be marking time on stage with 4 ladies dressed in swimsuits and simulating sex. There's no other way. Yeah, because I look at different, I can't dance. I'm not a very good dancer like you or Sheridan Gregoire. But I like to see people dance. And when you watch art forms like the Kizomba of Angola, that was patterned on Calypso and Zouk. The dance patterns that go with it. We have work to do, because in the World Creole Music Festival, our choreography can be developed. There must be people in Dominica that can come up with more creative and bankable forms of choreography than just it's sensual, maybe 5%, but 95% sexual. Is that art?
What, Mr. G, are you giving us extra time, or we should have a part 2 next week?
Let me just give you my final sort of remarks. God is making all the points. I don't want to go over any of that. But what I want to say is this. if I had to give some advice to the people who are organizing the festival at this stage, I would suggest to them to do, when you had a wrong turn, if you're traveling on a road and you made a wrong turn, a left turn instead of a right, I would tell them to go back to that intersection and make the correct turn. Because part of what they're doing, allowing themselves to spend more money than they need to spend.
Yeah.
When we started Wadix and Gordon, all we got from Timothy was $245,000. $245,000, and we created a festival. Gordon was able to go out there and we negotiated with all these people like RFO and so on. Everything was free. You get the thing in Mauritius, in the Seychelles, everybody hearing about that people want to come now. It was free. That was what was negotiated. And the intention was not for us to keep just bringing bands and paying them all kinds of thousands and thousands of dollars. In fact, what I suspect is happening now. You see, we're marginalizing the local in terms of track. Remember when we did the festival, one of our priorities was ensuring that the vendors outside of the festival made a lot of money.
True.
The idea was for Dominicans and Dominica to benefit.
Yeah.
So in terms of now what I see happening, I suspect that the organizers are spending, instead of having this free promotions from RFO and all these people, all these friend radio systems, we're paying them tons of money now, and they're deciding what kind of promotions we do and all that kind of thing. Exactly. And then we're not spending the money on the local TV station and local radio station. So the intention was to bring this revenue in to benefit the local contributors. But instead now we are asking the local radio station and the media and so on to give them freeness. In fact, they pay some and give them big discount. And spending all the money on the other outside media. That is not making sense. The idea was for the thing to benefit Dominica, Dominican media, Dominican vendors. That was the purpose. So I would suggest to them, go back and take a new look on this thing, make a right turn. It's not going in the right direction.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. G. And Gordon, while we wound up, we have a date for next week, Gordon?
Certainly.
Yeah, because I really want us to explore the language. Just go ahead.
Before we leave, there's a point that I forgot that Sheridan Grogwa brought up is I support what he said in terms of this overpriced artists, because many of the biggest festivals, I think one of them is called WMAX. You know, artists pay to perform at WMAX. Yeah. And if you think that you have potential, but you do not have the reach, your record company or from your own pocket, that is a very intelligent investment to get on the WMAX stage. You pay
to perform.
And besides, if you don't pay, there are record companies. It's nothing new in the industry. Your publishing company or your record label would pay to get you on the World Creole Music Festival. But you need people of the industry who know how the industry works to do that. That was the point that I forgot when I said that Sheridan Gregor was saying two things with that in respect to that.
Okay, Gordon, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to, once again educate our nation. Also, thank you very much, Mr. G, for really butting in, because I think this discussion, we need to have it, because it's important that we understand the foundation, the whole spinal cord of this branded event, which really took storm from day one. I mean, we didn't get the necessary results at the gates. But then one of the critical things, it was a brand, it was a something very unique immediately. And I will still maintain, if we never had Kada Slip, so we would have never had the authenticity to actually hold a World Creole Music Festival like that. And I also want to say a little Creole, wash la masola wifize, kai plibe la kaila. I just want to really make a special appeal just before we leave to people like Julius Timothy, Sheridan Gregoire, Norris Prevost, the memory of late Eddie Toulon and Jamala. Big up to Gordon, Sobers Esprit, Jeffrey Brisbane, Steve Hyacinth, Steinberg Henry, Gregory Rabes, Freddie Nicholas, Oliver St. John, Michael Fagan, Michael Fedel, and the late Miss Ailey, some of the original members. See you next week, Gordon, for another part, as a matter of fact, part two in this discussion, as we really hope to educate our nation as to where we are with the WCMF, where we can go, where we need to go, or whether we just take out the sea and have our music festival and do what we want. Prince Wadix, may God bless you. The News Major comes up next on the big station Q95 FM.
Yes, that. Bakay Malan. Prince Wadix. Prince Wadix. Prince Wadix.